Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Kingdom Hearts Summary. This is part 3, where I will be covering the Pre-Kingdom Hearts 3 trilogy. These games are meant to set up Kingdom Hearts 3, and they progress the story along right up until 3 starts. The one we start with is Dream Drop Distance, which many consider to be the most confusing in the series, but that's mainly because it introduces time travel, which is usually always complicated. It also is a sort of Pokemon game, because you have creatures called Dream Eaters that you can collect and raise. A very unique game, and one that I like pretty good. So Dream Drop Distance is the second game where you play as Sora and Riku in their own sort of separate campaigns. It begins with us seeing a cutscene of apprentice Xehanort turning all of the original organization members into nobodies, and him fully accepting the Ansem title, or moniker. We then cut to the present, where Sora and Riku are taking the Mark of Mastery to prepare to rescue all of the lost Keyblade wielders. They also need to learn the power of waking in order to rescue a lost heart. They are introduced to the concept of Dream Eaters, which are creatures that exist in the realm of sleep. There are spirits which ward off the bad nightmares and the nightmares. The Mark of Mastery has Sora and Riku go through 7 sleeping worlds that were lost to darkness, and even when Kingdom Hearts was sealed, they didn't return. The two set off, and for some reason they look younger, because they really like using the young designs. They start off in Traverse Town, and over the course, they run into young Xehanort, Ansem, and Xemnas, even though 2 of them should be dead, and the other one shouldn't exist at this point in time. Sora also sees a faint apparition of Ventus next to young Xehanort one time. We cut to the real world to see most of the organization members we've defeated come back as normal people, such as Lee, and also Dylan and Alias. Ienzo is there as well. In Prankster's Paradise, the Pinocchio world, we see Riku run into Dark Riku, which is him when he was possessed by Ansem. We then cut back to see that Maleficent kidnapped Minnie to try to have a ransom for Disney Castle, as she's still trying to get another stronghold for some reason. But Lee comes in and saves the day, and reintroduces himself as Lee, even though people still call him Axel. We progress and see that Sora and Riku are kind of lost, even though this This is supposed to be a test, and Yensid can't really locate them. Eventually, they head into the world that never was, which was never a sleeping world. And they begin to see the weird things that have been going on. Sora runs into Xigbar, who tells him that he is in a dream, one that they made this entire time. And they have been cultivating him to turn into a new Xehanort vessel, whatever that means. Young Xehanort shows the past of how he became conscious of the future information. Browncoat Ansem, who was just a heart, went back in time to tell young Xehanort of his future so he could prepare. Now I'll explain the rules of time travel in this series. You can't bring your body, you can only bring your heart, and you can only go to a place where you yourself existed at that point. So since Ansem is Xehanort, he was able to go back, but of course he couldn't bring his body. Sora dives deeper into the dream and sees familiar faces such as Roxas, Shion, Naminé, and the Birth by Sleep trio, even though most of them he doesn't recognize. And when he meets Roxas, he gives Sora all of his memories and his feelings. His days in the organization and his days in the simulated Twilight Town. And we finally come to Xigbar and Xemnas explaining to Sora the whole plan. The Keyblade War was fought with 13 darknesses and 7 lights. So Xehanort is bringing his heart to 13 different vessels, and there will be 7 Guardians of Light who will then clash to form the Keyblade once again. And as you can see here, Xigbar is half Xehanort already, and so is all of the people we've seen so far: young Xehanort, Ansem, Xemnas, Dark Riku. And they're preparing to make Sora their last vessel. But of course, he says, "My friends are my power, we have this cool shot," and then he fights Xemnas to stop them. But that just drives him into the dream more, and so he starts to fall to darkness. But luckily, Ven is still in his heart, and he protects him with his armor, so Sora doesn't completely fall to darkness. We cut to Riku seeing Sora in his sort of dream bubble, trying to get him out, but he is unsuccessful. Riku makes it to the real world and finds the real Organization 13. And before old Xehanort can import his heart into Sora, Lee comes in once again, saving the day, and Sayax starts to fight with them. Riku has a fight with young Xehanort, and all of them go away. But of course, their plan is still beginning. But now the heroes know what it is. Sora is still asleep in his heart, so Riku uses the power of waking to go into Sora's heart and free him. The darkness combines with Ventus's armor, and we get the Armored Ventus Nightmare, which is the final boss of the game. Riku defeats it, and finds a data version of Ansem the Wise in Sora's heart, which he put in while Sora was in the pod after Chain of Memories, which basically contains information about the other people in Sora's heart: Roxas, Shion, and Ventus. We see Riku make it out, and Sora puts on goofy glasses, and they're having a little tea party. And Riku is made a Keyblade Master, but not Sora, because, he got duped. We see Sora reunite with all his Dream Eaters for one last send-off. And we see Lee summon a Keyblade. So he is one of the 7 Guardians of Light, which at this moment is him, Sora, Riku, Mickey, and that's it at the moment. They're planning to get Aqua, Ventus, and Terra. But since Terra's whereabouts are unknown, they get in Kairi as the last Guardian of Light. Which, she did get a Keyblade in Kingdom Hearts 2. Riku just sort of handed her one, and she killed a few Heartless. But now she's going to go on actual training to become a fully fledged wielder. And that was Dream Drop. The next part, it's not as complicated as people seem of it to be Key Saga, but you do have to really pay attention. Kingdom Hearts Key was first a web browser to fully comprehend the story, which was then re-released as Unchained Key as a mobile game, and then Union Cross in its final time. But there was also Key back cover, which adds a little bit more story to the original Key. I will be covering Key back cover, and the beginning of Unchained Key. Key takes place during the Keyblade War that Master Xehanort mentions. You play as a creatable character who is one of the many, many Keyblade wielders in ancient times. You join one of 5 unions: Unicornus, Vulpus, Anguis, Languis, and the other one. Sorry. And you basically live out your time collecting Lux, which is light, and defeating Heartless. Along the way, you have your Chirithy, which is a Dream Eater who's like your own personal companion. And you also meet Ephemer and Skuld, basically your best friends, who are very important. Back cover tells the story of the Foretellers, which are the leaders of the unions: Ava, Ira, Ased, Envy, and Gula. And their master, the Master of Masters, and the 6th Foreteller, Lushu. The Master gives roles to all of the Foretellers to basically prep them for the coming Keyblade War. He has the Book of Prophecies, which has the future written in it, and a strange black box, which he gives both to Lushu. And he also gives him the Keyblade that he is holding, which has the Master's eye in it, which allows him to write the Book of Prophecies. And basically, the Foretellers begin to fight one another because there's supposedly a traitor. And actually, the traitor is Lushu, even though he's not around during the main story. There's also a key character named Strelitzia, who is basically like a stalker sort of person for your player character. She never outright speaks to them, but she's always watching, and sadly gets killed before the Keyblade War starts by an unknown person. So, the Foretellers, knowing there's a traitor, eventually turn on each other and begin the Keyblade War, where all of the Keyblade wielders are fighting for Lux and for Kingdom Hearts. And there are basically no survivors, except for the Dandelions, which is Ava's group that the Master told her to make. And at the end, we see the player character joined by Ephemer and Skuld, who somehow survived, and they pick him up. We then see the creation of the new 5 unions as the foretellers disappear after the Keyblade War. So does the Master and Lushu. We see Ephemer and Skull as 2 of them, Brain, a whole new person, and Laurium and Ventus. Laurium being Marluxia's somebody, and Ventus being Ven, somehow all the way in the past. And we see Maleficent here, even though this is way in the past, talking with a being just called Darkness. And this entity is what tells Maleficent about the Book of Prophecies and the Black Box, which becomes her motivation in the future. Laurium learns of Strelitzia's disappearance, and Strelitzia is his younger sister. So he goes to one of Strelitzia's friends, which is Elrena, Larxine's somebody. And they begin to start the hunt to figure out what happened to Strelitzia. The other Union leaders discuss how the world they're in, which is named Daybreak Town, is actually a data version of the real Daybreak Town because it was destroyed in the Keyblade War. So they took the data of all the Keyblade wielders and the real Keyblade wielders and put it inside a data version of Daybreak Town, which they now live in. And that is as much as I'm covering for right now. I will cover the rest of it after KH3. The story in this game is definitely better seen than told. I recommend a person named Demo who made a compilation of all the important scenes inside the whole of the Key Saga. So definitely check that out when you can. The final game for this video is 0.2 Birth by Sleep, A Fragmentary Passage, which is a very, 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 very short game, like 1 hour tops, which tells of Aqua's journey in the Dark Realm and serves as a straight prequel to Kingdom Hearts 3. 0.2 picks up right where he left off at Birth by Sleep, with Aqua in the Dark Realm. We see her arrive at Castle of Dreams and fight Heartless. She then goes to Dwarf Woodlands and then finally Enchanted Dominion. Not much story happens, it's mainly gameplay, and it's her coming to terms with where she is and if she might never escape. But eventually she meets up with Mickey, who at this time is in the Dark Realm to get the Kingdom Key D, the other Kingdom Key, which is the Keyblade that Sora has, so he can seal the door Kingdom Hearts in the first game. So we see them combine forces, and they go to Destiny Islands, which is in the Dark Realm, and he finds the Kingdom Key D inside the secret place from the beginning of the game. And then, while they're trying to escape, we see Riku, who's also there, and a giant swarm of Heartless start to go for him, but Aqua holds them back and goes back deeper into the Dark Realm. So she basically saved Riku in a sacrifice. And after the worlds are restored, she falls deeper into darkness. But this is between certain scenes. So after this is when she meets up with Ansem the Wise at the end of Birth by Sleep. And we see Mickey and Riku, and Mickey is telling Riku the story of when she was in the Dark Realm with him. And Yensid gives them new clothes and sets them on a journey to go rescue Aqua in the Dark Realm. We also see Sora come, and Yensid tells him to power up because during the Mark of Mastery, he lost a lot of his power, and to actually learn how to use the power of waking. And, well, Sora only knows one place with a true hero, and that's Olympus Coliseum, which is the first world that he goes to in Kingdom Hearts 3. And that ends the Pre-KH3 era. These few games are pretty good. I don't know if they stand by themselves, but as part of a collection, they're definitely very good. Tune in next time for the fourth and final part where we cover Kingdom Hearts 3, the rest of the Key Saga, and Melody of Memory. See you then.